This 5-year-old girl's life is in danger. Hundreds of soldiers have their guns trained on her. If she dares to cross the yellow line on the ground, the soldiers will pull the trigger and shoot. No matter how much the girl pleads for help, she can't awaken the conscience of those on the other side. In the face of gunfire, the mother was unafraid. She jumped on her child to protect her, but she was shot in the shoulder. The girl saw her mother's bone-chilling pain, but she tried her best to protect her mom. Not long ago, South Korea was hit by a devastating catastrophe. A new, highly contagious strain of influenza is spreading through the city. Those who were infected coughed and coughed until they fell to the ground vomiting blood. In just 2 days, thousands of people have been infected and killed. In order to control the spread of the virus, the government resorted to illegal methods. The little girl was one of the victims, and the source of the evil came from a cross-country container. The container was filled with stowaways from Southeast Asia. When the agents Nyo Det and Nyo Air came to pick them up, they were shocked by the scene in front of them. Dozens of stowaways were all dead. The deaths were horrific. The two brothers rushed to use their cell phones to capture the scene. Suddenly a hand grabbed their legs. The boys climbed forward helplessly. In order not to get into trouble, they had to get him out of here. Unbeknownst to them, that the boy was the source of the virus. Halfway there, during a break, the boy escaped. By now, the virus had already spread. The first to be infected was Nyo Air. They went to the drugstore to buy medicine. The doctor thinks it's just a mild cold. A few pills and they'd be fine in no time. With Nyo Air's constant coughing, the people who passed by inadvertently got infected. At that time, people didn't even realize that this trivial cold would kill tens of thousands of people across the country. As time went on, signs of the cold began to appear in the city. By now, the infected Nyoji had begun to vomit blood. He was taken to the hospital, but before the doctors could begin treatment, he lost all signs of life. Dr. Kim, through the patient's symptoms, she guessed that it could be the flu virus, and they found the video of the container on the patient's cell phone. If nothing else, the source of the virus is the container in the video. Dr. Kim tried to ask Nyoda where the container is, but he was afraid of getting burned. He chose to hide the truth. The hospital and the CDC analyzed the virus and confirmed that it's a mutated strain of influenza, but we don't know how fast it's spreading. While everyone was discussing the matter, the nurses had more bad news. There are countless patients with the same condition. The police searched the area, finally found the location of the container, and burned the bodies inside. The escaped boy came to the city center. In an underground garage, he accidentally saved Dr. Kim's daughter Keiko's life. In gratitude to the boy, Keiko gave him the food she was holding. That's how she got infected with the virus. On the other hand, when Dr. Kim was investigating the container site, Dr. Kim found a third party's footprints. Since he survived, he must have antibodies in his body, so she immediately reported the situation. Through continuous analysis of the video, the boy's face was quickly identified, but the congressman who came to find out what happened didn't care. In his mind, it was just a minor flu. All he had to do was send in a specialist, and it'll be over in a minute. Unbeknownst to him, the city was in a state of chaos. A gas station on the side of the road was set ablaze by an out-of-control car. The first infected were vomiting blood and dying. The hospitals are overflowing with patients. Even with the protection of the medical staff, there was no way to avoid infection. Legislators and top leaders saw the situation was out of control. They stood on the roof waiting for a helicopter to get out of here. Dr. Kim could have left with them, but for the sake of his daughter, he chose to stay. Now the flu is getting worse. The president immediately ordered a quarantine of the entire city to prevent the virus from spreading further. The prime minister told the truth on the air. When the people knew the truth, they rushed to buy supplies. Dr. Kim is searching for his daughter. It's too dangerous here. Special forces have been mobilized. They're blocking off the mall. People are vomiting blood inside. Keiko was so scared that she cried. Dr. Kim heard her crying. He looked around anxiously. At that moment, his friend Yonggu arrived. He quickly picked up Keiko. The three of them rushed out of the mall. Dr. Kim asked Long Kyu to leave with him, but Long Kao, a fireman, couldn't bear to see her die. There was no other way. Dr. Kim could only take her daughter away first. But at the moment of boarding, Keiko's cough caught the attention of the staff. No matter how she tried to explain, all she got in return was a cold refusal. At that moment, the government continued to send troops. The entire city was sealed off. In order to prevent any slip-ups, they rushed into people's homes. They rushed everyone to the quarantine zone. Because the symptoms of this flu are red spots on the body, everyone in the quarantine area has to take off their clothes and be examined. Dr. Kim and her daughter were also brought here. While she was tying her daughter's hair, she realized that Keiko was already infected. She knew that once her daughter was sent to the infected area, it would be almost impossible for her to survive. Out of her motherly nature, Dr. Kim concealed her daughter's condition. When the medical staff wasn't looking, she secretly pushed her daughter behind the inspectors, so she and her daughter made it to the uninfected area. But then Keiko's condition began to deteriorate. The good news is, the medical staff in the infected quarantine area had a surprise. They found the boy who escaped from the container. Dr. Kim soon received a call from her supervisor. She ran a serum test on the boy. As soon as the serum was isolated and possessed antibodies, she was able to create a cure for the virus. But her daughter's condition was critical. Dr. Kim couldn't wait any longer. She managed to get her colleagues out of the lab. Then she brought her daughter to the boy. When she saw Dr. Kim carrying the patient patient in a panic. The boy resisted instinctively. When he recognized Keiko in his arms, he let go of his fear. He rushed to cooperate with Dr. Kim and gave him the injection. But at the critical moment, a colleague outside noticed something unusual in the lab. They rushed in with soldiers. Dr. Kim struggled desperately. She finally injected her daughter with the serum. She was then forcibly sedated. As her consciousness was about to fade, she watched helplessly as her daughter was taken away. At that moment, Ryuji saw Keiko in the quarantine area. He immediately chased after her. When he arrived at the parking lot, he saw a scene of disbelief. The parking lot was filled with corpses. Some had been put into body bags. Others were lying there moaning. The search was fruitless. Long Jio came to the parking lot, but the scene in front of him froze him completely. He saw an 80-meter deep pit filled with corpses. Huge iron claws are still dropping body bags into it. This place has already become a hell on earth. When the flames burned out, Long Jio hurriedly jumped into the pit, frantically searching for Keiko, but there were corpses all over the place. It was hard to find the child. Just when he was in despair, a cell phone suddenly rang in the pile of corpses. After turning over one corpse after another, he finally saw Keiko buried underneath. He immediately picked up Keiko and ran outside. On the other hand, when Dr. Kim woke up, she searched for her daughter. When she arrived at the parking lot, she saw all the corpses in front of her eyes. She was devastated. At that moment, there was a riot in the quarantine zone. A soldier tried to leave with his infected mother, but he was stopped by his commanding officer. In a fit of anger, he told the truth. The smoke in the distance was caused by the burning of the infected. Some of them are still alive. The officer immediately shot the soldier, and this shot made all the citizens unable to suppress their anger any longer. They rushed forward in a frenzy, ignoring the army. When they reached the top of the stadium, the scene was as horrible as the soldier had said. The citizens couldn't stand it any longer. They swarmed in and rushed in to rescue the living infected. Dr. Kim received a message from Long Kyu. Knowing that her daughter is still alive, she cried tears of joy. Just when she was about to ask for the exact location, the lab's car stopped in front of her. It turns out that the angry citizens have destroyed the lab. They need Dr. Kim's help urgently. Transfer the boy to develop the antibody again. At that moment, the angry citizens blocked the car with their bodies. During the fight, Dr. Kim's walkie-talkie fell to the ground. The boy rushed out of the car to help find it, but he ran into Nyoda. He blamed the boy for his brother's death. He stabbed the boy again and again, although the soldiers finally killed the bull. But the boy was already seriously injured. Dr. Kim and the others rushed to carry the boy to the car and continue their escape. At that moment, Young-gu and Keiko arrived. Dr. Kim didn't see him in the panic. The two of them passed each other by. When he calmed down, Dr. Kim remembered his daughter. He contacted Young-gu through the walkie-talkie. Wheezy's symptoms were stable. Dr. Jean was overjoyed. This shows that her daughter has produced antibodies in her body. Then she told Long Kyu where she was going next, and asked Long Jio to bring her daughter with her. But when Long Jio was on his way there, he met a Korean man, Old Ma. On the way there, Long Kao was worried about accidents, so he tried to go around quietly. But Old Ma saw him. He knew that Keiko had antibodies in her body, so he was going to take Keiko by force. But Long Jio is no slouch either. He punched Old Ma and knocked him to the ground. He finally arrived at the destination at dawn, but there was already a large-scale conflict. Angry citizens united together. They tried to break through the military blockade. At that moment, Mr. Horse was urging all of them, "We must get out of here and reach Seoul. Only if all the people there are infected, the government will come to the rescue." Under the virus, citizens have lost the ability to recognize right from wrong. They're raising their weapons. They keep approaching the blockade line. On the other side, Dr. Kim and his team managed to escape from the quarantine zone, but the boy died of blood loss. She told the director that her daughter had developed antibodies in her body. This may be the last hope. As the situation escalates, the prime minister gave the order to open fire. In his eyes, sacrificing a city for the safety of the whole country is a good deal. There was a lot of gunfire. Citizens in the front line fell to the ground. The army set up another line of defense, but their actions did not deter the citizens. On the contrary, it aroused more anger in their hearts. Dr. Kim arrived at that moment. She was signaling desperately. She desperately signaled to everyone not to advance. In the midst of the chaotic shooting, Ryujio lost Keiko. Keiko was crying for her mom in the crowd. At the same time, the government issued an order: kill anyone who crosses the quarantine line. Seeing her daughter in front of the crowd, Dr. Kim couldn't stand it any longer. He ignored the soldiers' warnings. He rushed out frantically. Seeing that Keiko had already crossed the quarantine line, the soldiers behind him were threatened. They could only shoot at the ground as a warning, but he shot Dr. Kim in the shoulder. Seeing her mother injured, the brave Keiko spread her arms. She stood in front of her mom. Seeing this scene, the people behind her couldn't stand it any longer. They rushed forward. They held Keiko back. At that moment, Ryukyu suddenly saw the surveillance camera, so he rushed to pick it up and showed Keiko's recovery. When the president saw this, immediately ordered to stop shooting, but the American officials disagreed and started their program to prevent the virus from spreading around the world. They're going to use bombers to level the infected area. The South Korean president is also being tough this time. He vowed to defend his people to the death. He's ordered the Defense Control Command to activate their missiles. The South Koreans are taking this seriously, but American officials are scared. At the end of the movie, the president canceled all the defense measures. The antibody in Haija's body saved all the infected citizens. In the face of disaster, The ugly side of human nature appeared, but in the end, goodness overcame evil.